In the shadow of a tense and unpredictable world, imagine the sky suddenly ablaze. A barrage of Iranian missiles streaking toward a U.S. military installation. With chilling accuracy, a fleet of next-generation agile warheads weaves past the American Patriot missile shield. In less than half an hour, the scene transforms into a tableau of destruction. More than $500 million worth of F-35s and top-tier U.S. fighter jets are left as smoldering ruins. If this sounds like the stuff of speculative fiction, think again. Such a scenario is alarmingly close to reality. For the past 2 months, the United States has been reinforcing its military footprint across the Middle East. On the remote island of Diego Garcia, nestled deep within the Indian Ocean, 6 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, the most advanced aircraft in America's arsenal, uniquely equipped to deliver the formidable GBU-57 bunker buster bomb, stand ready. Each bomber, armed with 2 of these devastating munitions, poses a grave threat to Iran's deeply fortified underground military complexes. Alongside these, the U.S. has dispatched dozens of F-35s and other combat aircraft, including F-15s, F-16s, and A-10s, to bolster its regional presence. This is not a hypothetical buildup. These deployments are actively unfolding, setting the stage for a potential large-scale strike against Iran. Yet, Iran is not expected to remain passive, and despite America's air superiority, its forces on the ground are exposed and vulnerable. The current crisis is rooted in escalating friction between Iran and the United States. One of the new administration's earliest moves was to intensify pressure on Tehran, seeking a fresh agreement to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. The challenge, however, is that Iran steadfastly refuses to engage with the White House. From Tehran's perspective, there is little incentive. America's track record is marred by broken promises. After previously agreeing to ease sanctions in exchange for curbing nuclear ambitions, the U.S. later abandoned the deal, even though Iran had complied. Subsequent attempts at negotiation have faltered, especially under the current administration. U.S. military actions against regional allies and threats of territorial incursions have only deepened mistrust, making America seem an unreliable partner. As a result, Iran now insists on third-party mediation, hoping that if countries like Qatar or the UAE are involved, any future American betrayal would carry broader diplomatic consequences. This maneuver is designed to hold the U.S. accountable, particularly as its global reputation suffers. Washington, however, interprets this demand as an affront, refusing to participate in mediated talks. Instead, the president has ordered a sweeping military buildup, preparing for possible combat with Iran. In retaliation, all of America's Middle Eastern partners, except Israel, have closed their airspace to U.S. warplanes, severely restricting flight paths and increasing the risks for American pilots, even those flying stealthy B-2 bombers. This makes their routes more predictable and allows Iran to concentrate its air defenses. So, what might unfold if hostilities erupt? Inside Iran, political tensions are boiling over. The regime faces growing unpopularity and is gradually losing its grip on society. More Iranians are embracing liberal ideals, challenging the conservative religious order. Protests against mandatory headscarves, led by both men and women, are increasingly visible on social media, with frequent clashes against the morality police fueling further unrest. The recent U.S. military surge follows a series of humiliating setbacks for Iran. In October 2024, Iran unleashed over 200 ballistic missiles in a massive assault on Israel, but the damage was minimal. A Palestinian civilian was the only direct casualty, killed by falling missile debris. The operation, intended as a show of force, ended up as a triumph for Israel's defenses and a blow to Iranian prestige. This came on the heels of another failed attempt in April 2024, when Iran launched the largest drone attack in history with similarly disappointing results. Meanwhile, Israeli operations have decimated Hezbollah and nearly eradicated Hamas, while Iranian-backed militias are being forced out of Syria. The cumulative effect has been a series of humiliations for Iran's hardline leadership. Now, with the American military buildup looming, Iran's leaders see it as the final provocation. Within the upper echelons of Tehran's leadership, the pressure to respond mounts relentlessly. Senior regime figures warn that inaction could trigger a crisis of legitimacy. With great reluctance, the supreme leader consents to a bold surprise assault on American forces, an operation designed to inflict enough pain to make Washington reconsider further escalation. At precisely 2:45 a.m. on May 12, 2025, encrypted attack orders ripple out to mobile missile launchers stationed in Fars province, as well as to above-ground and subterranean missile complexes in Khuzestan. To shield these assets from prying American eyes, heavy GPS spoofing blankets the area, creating an electromagnetic veil in case of a suspected U.S. preemptive strike. Yet no American counterattack materializes. The Iranian plan has remained tightly guarded, and the country's missile units have maintained maximum readiness for months. Their chosen target, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military outpost in the region. This base acts as the nerve center for U.S. Central Command, overseeing operations across Iran and beyond. The primary objective is to cripple the runways and the critical infrastructure that supports air operations. Secondary targets include the fortified hangars currently sheltering F-22 Raptors, B-1 Lancers, and F-35s. Destroying the air traffic control tower is also a priority, but the highest value target is the deeply buried CENTCOM command post beneath the base. The Iranian strike package is formidable: 20 Zulfiqar ballistic missiles, 20 Desful ballistic missiles, 10 Sejil ballistic missiles, 15 Fateh Mobin missiles, and 20 Shahed 136 loitering munitions. Defending Al Udeid are a THAAD battery and 3 Patriot batteries, recently reinforced from the U.S. mainland. The base's defenses are further bolstered by several CRAM systems positioned to shield vital installations. Offshore, 2 U.S. Navy Aegis-equipped warships patrol the surrounding waters. The first launches come from mobile platforms in Fars, quickly echoed by barrages from 2 underground missile complexes in Khuzestan. These missiles are loaded and fired entirely below ground, with crews working deep inside silos, never exposing themselves or the weapons to aerial surveillance. The brilliant flares of the missile launches are instantly detected by American infrared satellites overhead, which register dozens of heat signatures within seconds. Alarms are triggered at the U.S. National Military Command Center in Washington, which relays the alert to CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa, Florida. Warnings are then transmitted to Al Udeid and every American base in the region, including Diego Garcia. As the first wave of missiles soars skyward, 3 inconspicuous civilian vessels off Qatar's coast unleash their own salvos. These ships are armed with Fateh Mobin missiles, nearly 30 feet long, with infrared guidance and the versatility to strike land or sea targets. Their compact size allows them to be hidden in standard shipping containers, offering a deadly edge of surprise. The Fateh Mobins are programmed to target U.S. air defense radars and satellite arrays, aiming to blind American defenses ahead of the main barrage. Simultaneously, a swarm of drones lifts off from the decks of these civilian ships. Some are tasked with relaying real-time intelligence back to Iranian commanders, while others, 20 Shahed 136 drones launched from containers with rocket boosters, switch to propeller power and form up into attack formations. These drones accelerate to 115 miles per hour, trailing behind the subsonic Fateh Mobin missiles. Both the missiles and drones follow a similar flight profile. After climbing, they skim just above the sea's surface, evading radar detection. The only early warning for the Americans is a fleeting radar blip as the Patriots briefly catch the launches. Sirens wail across Al Udeid as personnel race for hardened bunkers built to withstand missile impacts. Pilots, defying orders to shelter, scramble to ready their aircraft for immediate launch, knowing that getting airborne is their best hope of survival. The Iranians select a moment of vulnerability to launch their strike. The hardened shelters are packed to capacity, leaving numerous American aircraft exposed out in the open. As the Fateh Mobeen missiles close in at nearly supersonic speeds, U.S. air defense radar begins tracking their approach. Initially, these missiles remain hidden below the horizon due to the Earth's curvature, but as they near their target, they become visible. By this point, they have closed to within just a few dozen miles, moving just under the speed of sound. Patriot interceptors fire in response, but there is no time for a follow-up salvo. Out of the 15 missiles inbound, 9 are intercepted and destroyed by Patriot batteries. C-RAM systems ignite the night sky as the missiles enter the Patriot engagement zone, unleashing tungsten projectiles at a blistering rate. The tracers streak like laser beams, and 3 additional explosions erupt as C-RAM rounds find their marks. Yet 3 missiles evade the U.S. defenses. Guided by artificial intelligence, they assign themselves to high-value targets. 2 strike the air traffic control tower, obliterating it entirely. The 3rd missile homes in on a Patriot radar installation, disabling it. While Iran had hoped for a more decisive outcome from this initial salvo, the destruction of the control tower will severely disrupt American coordination of air operations. Though the base has multiple radar systems, losing one diminishes the U.S.'s ability to counter the remaining threats. Next, the Sajil missiles arrive, descending at hypersonic speeds from extreme altitudes. Patriot interceptors engage, but the missile's velocity makes interception difficult. 8 out of 10 are shot down. The remaining 2 hit a fuel storage tank and 1 hardened shelter, destroying the F-22 housed inside. The fuel depot erupts in flames, threatening to ignite adjacent tanks. Despite ongoing attacks, firefighting crews risk their lives to prevent a catastrophic blaze. At sea, the Navy's 2 Aegis-equipped warships, linked via network defenses, join the battle to protect the base. They target and destroy most of the Shahed drones, though 2 manage to slip through. Meanwhile, Iran's remaining missiles continue to arrive in waves, intercepted high above by American defenses. The collisions between missiles and interceptors create a deadly fireworks display, with debris raining down over several square miles, endangering anyone caught outside. 2 more hardened shelters are struck, and multiple F-35s on the flight line are destroyed. The surviving Shahed drones find C-RAM systems depleted of ammunition and swoop low to attack exposed aircraft. The entire assault concludes in under 30 minutes. While most Iranian weapons are neutralized, the U.S. suffers losses nearing $500 million in aircraft alone. Damage to the base will total several $billion. Basic operations will take days to resume, with full functionality weeks away. 1 American pilot is killed, several ground crew perish, and dozens suffer traumatic brain injuries from blast shocks. Debris kills 1 civilian outside the base and injures several others, sparking outrage in Qatar. The pressing question remains: what happens next? Though this scenario may seem fictional, it is a very real possibility, and Iran possesses the capability to execute such an attack. Aware of its conventional inferiority to the U.S., Iran has historically pursued asymmetrical tactics to counter American military power. Deploying large missile barrages and drone swarms, some small enough to be concealed in civilian shipping containers, is a prime example designed for surprise. Currently, America's options for striking Iran are constrained. Despite overwhelming power, the U.S. depends heavily on allies and partners, many of whom are reluctant. Countries like Jordan and Saudi Arabia, while adversarial to Tehran, are wary of a regional war erupting nearby. The potential for collateral damage and a refugee crisis deters them from approving U.S. strikes, which is why their airspace remains closed to American warplanes en route to Iran. This poses a significant challenge for U.S. military planners because Iran's air defenses, a blend of aging and modern systems, still pose a serious threat, especially when flight paths are restricted and predictable. Concentrated radar arrays make it nearly impossible for even stealthy B-2 bombers to avoid detection. Therefore, any successful B-2 mission requires meticulous planning to navigate around enemy air defenses rather than simply flying through them. A ground invasion is off the table, as the U.S. is unwilling to engage in another Middle Eastern land war so soon. Iran's active-duty military numbers approximately 610,000 troops, presenting a formidable obstacle. Unlike Iraq in past conflicts, Iran can directly strike American staging areas. Tehran has carefully studied the First Gulf War and the 2003 Iraq invasion, learning critical lessons on countering U.S. forces. Chief among these is the imperative to prevent U.S. troops from establishing a foothold in the region. Once American forces arrive in large numbers, removing them becomes nearly impossible. Consequently, Iran has poured substantial resources into its vast missile programs, enabling it to threaten every potential U.S. staging area for an invasion. No matter how superior the U.S. military might be, dominance counts for little if troops cannot be deployed into the conflict zone. This reality confines America's options in any war with Iran primarily to air and missile strikes. However, such strikes are unlikely to accomplish Washington's objectives of regime change or forcing Iran to alter its nuclear and missile ambitions. Yet the Iranian regime now faces a critical vulnerability it lacked before: growing domestic discontent. The Iranian populace is increasingly frustrated with the government and may become susceptible to U.S. psychological operations and influence campaigns. America's likely strategy would focus on targeting military installations and power plants, crippling Iran's military capabilities while simultaneously disrupting electricity production. This would exacerbate public anger, potentially sparking widespread demands for regime change. Iran already grapples with unpopular electricity shortages. The crisis extends beyond electricity shortages to natural gas for heating and cooking, as well as erratic gasoline supplies. On average, Iran suffers a 20% electricity shortfall, a 25% deficit in natural gas, and inconsistent gasoline availability. This energy predicament stems partly from internal mismanagement and partly from international sanctions. To stave off public unrest, Iran spends up to 25% of its GDP annually subsidizing energy, keeping prices artificially low for consumers, but only when energy is available. These subsidies drain the national budget, impairing Iran's ability to pay for energy imports from the few willing trade partners. While subsidies may pacify the population, they discourage private investment in energy infrastructure. This vicious cycle worsens yearly. Insufficient investment hinders infrastructure development, yet the government cannot afford to maintain existing energy supplies. Attempts to expand energy infrastructure are frequently plagued by inefficiency and corruption, with funds diverted by officials or wasted. Cheap gas prices have also fostered a lucrative black market, as some Iranians smuggle gasoline abroad, further reducing domestic supply. Iran's foreign policy missteps compound the problem. For nearly a decade, Tehran supplied Syria with up to 100,000 barrels of oil daily free of charge, even as Iranian citizens faced gasoline shortages. This aid once supported Iranian interests in Syria, but with the collapse of the Syrian government and loss of proxies, it has become a decade-long costly mistake. The energy crisis ripples through Iran's economy, driving up prices for construction, food, and other goods while stifling economic activity. The country resembles a pressure cooker nearing its breaking point. A successful U.S. military campaign that minimizes civilian casualties could trigger a major regime change in Iran. This explains why Tehran prioritizes its defense despite severe budget constraints. Without regional allies and partners, the U.S. might topple the regime, but only at a high cost. An America-first approach that sidelines allies has transformed what should be a straightforward tactical victory into a potential quagmire with far-reaching consequences for both the U.S. and the broader region. What do you think would be the greatest risk if the U.S. and Iran actually went to war? Would the conflict remain regional, or could it escalate into something far larger? Share your thoughts in the comments below.